it's Tara, the Painted Cicada with Paint, Rinse, Repeat. Welcome to Springtime Burst Acrylic Dot Painting. I am so glad you are here today. We are going to be dotting with just a few colors and a few tools. This is a great beginner lesson. When you signed up with me, you got a supply list, and I'm just going to go over the supplies quickly, but know that you can substitute anything that you have at home, similar colors, different dotting tools, whatever you want to do. Let me get my other sample up here. So I made this to kind of get in the groove of dotting. It's been a while since I've done dotting. I used to do it all the time. I love it. And so this is a really nice beginner lesson. There's not too many complicated steps. So first, let's talk about colors. So I will be using a magenta, a light pink. Oops, that messed my camera up. Magenta, light pink, white, a bright aqua, and then I've got black for my background. And so those are the 5 colors that I'm going to be using. And I really love for dotting, I love the DecoArt Americana line because it's pretty much the perfect consistency. I don't really ever have to thin it down or worry too much about the thickness of the paint. So what I'm going to do before we get started is just put some in paint cups, and you'll notice I don't need to use a lot. So I'm going to get this paint in my little paint tray here, and I'm using very little paint. Dotting does not take a lot, and even after I'm done with this, you'll see I have quite a bit left over in my little tray here. So don't go crazy with the paint. I'm going to leave my black in the bottle because I'm just using that for the background. And then as far as dotting tools go, I recommend a 10 millimeter, an 8 millimeter, a 6 millimeter, a 4 millimeter, and then a stylus with a dot tip. Now, this will work with any extra large, large, medium, small, and tiny dotting tool you have available. So if you are new to dotting and don't have a set of tools, you can even scrounge around your office and find some pencils with ends on them. So for example, these two, the eraser and the end of this pencil have 2 different sizes. So this could be my medium and large. I could use a lipstick container for in my extra large. So don't be afraid to be creative. You can dot without spending a lot of money. And then a chalk pencil is optional. I like to use the Stabilo all in white because I can just wipe it off with a wet wipe when I'm done. And that's to help you with the lines. But I did not use stencils today. We're going to walk through this together without stencils. So you don't really have to worry about needing a pencil. But pencils are helpful in dotting, and really all you need to know today is how to find the center. And we're going to be working out from the center. All right, and then let's see what else. So chalk pencil is kind of optional. Heat gun or hair dryer. I always have one by my desk. That just speeds along the drying process. Totally optional. I just put that on my list pretty much every time because I like to move quickly. A paintbrush, and that is to paint the background here. And varnish if you want to varnish when you're finished. One of my favorite varnishes for doing mandala stones is this DecoArt DuraClear High Gloss. It's just nice and shiny and gives a really good layer of protection. So those are all the supplies. A lot of them you'll notice are optional. So I hope that you find that this is one of the easier lessons to start with. What we're going to do is the first thing you should do is put a coat of black on your stone or your canvas or whatever you're working on. And then we're going to set that aside and do just a little bit of practice. So I already had one painted black, but it needs a second coat anyway. So I'm going to get in here and just put a second coat of black on here. That way, if you have to paint yours, we are all on the same steps at the same time. Now my stone does have a little notch here right at the center. The only thing you need to make sure you do is find the center of whatever you're working on. So if it's a piece of paper, if it's a little wood round, if it's a stone, you just want to have a center point because everything builds on that center point. And if you want to, when you start, if you have a stone versus a canvas, it's a good time now to paint the background as well, or the bottom side as well. Just get all the painting out of the way at the same time. And then we will set this aside and we will do a little practice before we start just to steady our hands. All right. The only downside of doing the front and the back at the same time is you can't put it down. So I'm going to zap this with my heat gun quickly and then we'll move on. And I've got it over here under the table so you don't have to listen to that roar right up next to the camera. All right, so that is step one, is just get a nice dark coat of black. So I'm going to set this aside for a moment. And that is all the black we're going to use is on the background. So I'm going to move mine out of the way. And then what I would like you to do before we start, we've got a few steps, basic steps that we need to learn in order to dot. So I've just got a piece of paper here and I encourage you just to set your surface to the side for now. And then let's just practice a few dots before we dive in. So the first thing I want you to do is get your large dotter. And let's see. I'm going to use this teal or aqua color because it will show up well on camera. So I realize we may be using different color paints. So what I want to show you is the thickness. So it should be creamy and have the consistency of like melted ice cream. And so when you dot your tip in there, you're going to dot it in, and it should make a little, almost a little peak on the end. And so when you press your dot down, you're going to hold your tool straight up and down so that it's perpendicular to your stone or your canvas. And you are going to lightly push down in the middle and then lift. And you'll notice it almost makes like a little peak on there. And that is the perfect consistency. And then as it dries, that'll drop down just a little bit. So that is the perfect dot. And so I encourage you to try a few of those. So we'll do a few with our large tool. So you dip in, get it nice and saturated, and then straight up and down, you're going to slowly depress. And what I do to help steady my hand is I usually have my pinky out. I use that to steady. And then I'll kind of lean also on the ball of my hand. So I've kind of got myself a little platform with my finger and my wrist to dot with. Every time I'm going to make a dot, I have to re-dip into my paint. If I don't do that, what happens is I don't have enough paint, and then I start to get some funny looking dots. So good, not enough paint, okay? So you want it to have that little peak in the middle. That's how you know you have enough paint. Otherwise, it's gonna leave these little smush marks. We don't want smush marks. Another trick, I don't know if it's a trick, but another thing that I really like when I'm dotting is baby wipes, because then I can just wipe it off and put it down. So I use these instead of a paper towel. They're just a quick, fast, easy way to get rid of some of this paint. All right, so that was my extra large tool. And then I'm just gonna move down and practice a few dots with each size. So that was 10 millimeters extra large. Next, I'm gonna move down to my large, which is 8 millimeters. Again, if your sizes are different, that's absolutely fine. So I dip into my paint. It's got a little peak on the end of the dotting tool, and then straight up and down. I'm going to push my tool down and then lift up, and it makes a little peak. And so I'm going to practice a few of those. In doing this, even though I am familiar with dotting and I've gotten better at it over time, it is always good to practice and just get used to that muscle memory. Okay, so I did a few of those. So that was extra large, large. Then next I've got my 6 millimeter, which will be my medium. And it doesn't matter what color paint you're using. We're just practicing, and it's the same thing. We're just going to get some dots. So get in the habit of each and every time dipping into your paint so that you have plenty of paint on the end of your tool. There we go. So that was medium. And then we've got 4 millimeter, which is our small. My 4 millimeter tool has seen better days. But it's the same method regardless of the size of the tool. You dip into the paint, make sure it's well saturated on the end, and it will make a little peak on your paper. right, so we've got extra large, we've got large, we've got medium, we've got small, and then I've got my tiny. So this is probably 1.5 millimeters, but really it just needs to be your smallest dot option. And so for this, you don't really have to worry about how much you have on the end. Just dip it in there, and then it's the same method, straight up and down. We don't want to be dotting at an angle. And there you have it. Now I'm going to show you one more thing, and it's called walking the dots. And for that, I am going to go up a size just so it's a little easier to see on the camera. But when we do it, we're just going to be using the tools that I recommended. So I've got a dotter here, a stylus small one, and I'm going to dip into the paint. And I've got a nice healthy amount of paint on the end, and I'm going to make a dot, and then I'm going to continue dotting with this, and you're going to see it's going to continue making dots, but they're going to get smaller. And so this is what happens when you don't refill the paint. This is called walking the dots, okay? So practice this a few times. You can do this with any size. So for example, this is the one I recommended in the supply list. And it does the same thing. Okay, so practice that a few times. We're just going to practice that going straight. And let's count them out. Let's do 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And you can see they move in progression and get smaller. So let's do that a few times. And this is one of my absolute favorite options when dotting. I love walking the dots. It's one of my favorite things to do. Now, when you walk the dots, you can do that in a circular motion. So for example, I can make my first dot here. So I can curve that. And when we curve that, it gives us a design around a previous dot that we've made. So for example, I am going to embellish around this dot here. So I'm going to do the same process we did down here, but I'm going to curve it around this dot. So I'm going to make 6 dots around the edge. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And then what I'm going to do is follow that around by dotting that center dot one more time and then going the opposite way. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And it gives a fun little detail. Now that's a little off center, but you get the idea, right? We're practicing. So it does not have to be perfect. That's why we practice. So I want you to try doing that around another large dot. So you hit the center, that's your 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and then you hit the center again, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And I'm going to see if I can do this one. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. That's a little better. And then I'll practice one more time. And that gives a nice little crown around the edge of some of these pieces. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. All right, here is the last thing I want to practice. And this is going to be a triangular embellishment on the end of a dot. So let's say we have a large dot here. What we're going to do, just for practice, is I'm going to leave a little space, and then I'm going to do a dot right there. And then on either side of this, sorry, my camera doesn't like when I come and go off the frame here. On either side of this, oh my gosh, stop focusing, camera. I might have to raise my camera just a little bit. All right, on either side of this dot, I'm going to make another set of dots. So each time I dip into my paint, and it'll create just a little triangle. So practice a few of those. All right, those are pretty much all the painting strokes or dotting strokes that we're going to work with today. So if you need to and you want to continue practicing, you can pause the video here and keep practicing until you are comfortable. So that is all of the good stuff. All right, I'm going to set this to the side and bring back my mandala, my stone here. My camera's having a fit. I can tell you this camera is about to bite the dust, and I have had enough. All right, so let me raise it up just a smidge. I think that will be a little more focus friendly. Give me just a moment here. There we go. I think that'll solve that problem. All right, let's begin dotting. The first tool I'm going to use is my extra large 10 millimeter. And I'm going to dip my end into my bright aqua. And I'm going to make one dot right on my center. And everything that we create is going to come out from this center. If you are really good at visualizing your lines, you may not need to do this. After I've been dotting for a while, I stopped having to do this, but I like to visualize 4 lines, and that is my north, south, and then east and west. And if you've got your chalk pencil, you can mark these. Again, remember I said we're not using a stencil today, we are using our eyes. And so I like to just mark those on there sometimes just to keep things straight. But that's optional. I work a lot without doing that, so don't feel like you have to. And then this is just chalk, so I can wipe it away when I'm finished. So I have my 4 points, north, south, east, and west, and that might help things just be a little bit easier for me. All right, so we've got our center dot, we've got our 4 cardinal points, there. And next I'm going to use my medium, which is 6 millimeters. And I am going to go into my magenta. And I'm going to do a magenta dot on each of these points right next to my aqua dot. So when you're doing that, you just want to leave a little space in between the edge of your tool and that center dot. So I'm not going to go right on it. I'm just doing this sideways just to kind of show you the placement. I'm not right on that, okay? Because when you push down, it's going to smush a little bit. And you make your dot. And you can go around in a circle or you can go across. I like to do across and then turn my mandala. So I'm going to go directly across and do my magenta dot. And then I turn it. I'll do this one. And then I'll do this one. Now while you're working, it may feel really important to make it perfect, but I promise you when we are finished, your eye is going to see the complete piece. It's not going to look for those little imperfections. So that's what I encourage you to do. Wish this thing would stop focusing. There we go. All right. So I did 4 in magenta, and then in between each of those 4, I am going to do 4 in my light pink. So it's the same idea, except this time we don't have the line, but we're doing it right in between. So use your magenta dots as your guide. So that creates a nice little circle around the center. Next, what we're going to do, we are going to grab the stylus. And we're going to use the dotting tip, and then we are going to go back to magenta. And next to each of these dots, right in the center, we are going to add a magenta dot. So right here, 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 okay? And that's where these lines sometimes will help us with our centers. So, and I like to always dot facing me. So like this line points to me. I like to have it here so I can make sure that I'm centering it. That helps me get these centered like they need to. All right, so you should have 8 dots of magenta. All right, I'm going to go back to my 6mm tool here. And we are going to use white and teal right now. So, or white and aqua. And what I'm going to do is in between each of these magenta dots, I'm going to place a larger dot, and I'm going to alternate white and teal. So work with me here. So I'm going to start with white, and it doesn't matter which one you start with. And in between these 2 magenta dots, I'm going to add a white dot. So I'm going to get these 2 lined up, and then white. And I'm going to skip one right here in between these 2, white, skip one in between these 2, white, skip one, and then in between these 2, white. And I'm going to wipe my daughter off. I'm going to go into that aqua. All right, so right here in between these 2, aqua. Skip, then we have aqua white, aqua white, aqua white, and aqua. So there we have varied up our pattern a little bit. Remember, at any point you can pause this video if you need to. All right, now we're going to get into some larger dots. So for this, I'm going to use my large 8mm, and I am going to use pink. Now, wherever there is a magenta dot, I'm going to dot a large pink dot, but I'm going to leave a little room. So just to give you an example, visualize a dot in between the magenta dot and the dot we're going to make. Okay, so I'm working with this light pink here. I'm going to line up my magenta dot, and I'm going to leave space, and then I'm going to have a pink dot. So visualize that there's something in between there. Leave a little bit of room. And then everywhere there's a magenta dot, I am going to do the same thing. Leave a little room and go large pink dot. All right, now I'm going to use the same size tool, my large, and I'm going to dip into magenta, and I am going to leave a little bit of room again, and I'm going to have a magenta dot next to each pink dot. And so this is where you're going to start to see this pattern move outwards. So see how I leave space in between. And I just use my best judgment. This is not perfect, but I try to keep them evenly spaced. Anytime you dot without a stencil, there's always going to be a little variation. But we try to keep it as close as we can. But I like to remind myself I'm not a machine. I'm an artist, and that natural variation is what makes it beautiful. So tell yourself that. Give yourself a little grace. There we go. So this burst, we can start to see it moving out, which is kind of cool. All right, so that was our large. Next, we are going to go back down to our 6mm, our medium. And we are going to dip white dots. All right, so what we're going to do is we're going to line this up where I have 2 magentas and visualize a line that connects the center here, going around the open area in between these 4 dots. That's where we're going to place this white dot, okay? So right in the center of your set of 4, light pink, magenta, magenta. In between those, we're going to add a white dot. Here's our set of 4, white dot. Set of 4, white dot. Set of 4, white dot. 1, 2, 3, 4, white dot. 1, 2, 3, 4, white dot. And our last one, 1, 2, 3, 4, white dot. So right now, this is where we are. All right, now we have got the main components of this design, and everything from here on out is embellishment, okay? So what I'm going to show you, let me see if I'm going to raise this up a little bit and see if that helps my camera. What having fits. I don't know what the problem is today, but that sure is frustrating, isn't it? There we go. All right, so next step we are going to do is magenta, and we're going to use our stylus for that. And so on these large white dots that we just made, I'm going to use the ball tip, and I'm going to dip into the magenta, And I'm going to put one dot on either side of this white dot that we made. So I'm going to dot one up top, dip again, and then one on the other side. One up top. Make sure you dip in your paint after every dot, and then one on the other side. One up top, one on the other side. And do that all the way around. One up top, one on the other side. All right, and we have one more thing to do next to these set of dots here. So it's going to be magenta, white, magenta, and we're going to do one more white with the dotting tool, the small stylus, your tiny size. And so right next to that magenta, I'm just going to make one white dot. All right, next we are going to start walking the dots. This is my favorite part of this class, and this is what kind of gives it that swirly fun look. So what we're going to do, let me think here, the best way to do this. We are going to go with our 4mm tool, okay, and we're using aqua to walk these dots. So the first thing we're going to do is use our 4mm, and we are going to set our starting point. So in between, we're going to go back to this area here. We've got these large pink dots all the way around. On the inside of those dots, we are going to use our 4mm tool and make one small aqua dot. In between, it's going to be in between the bright the light pink and the tiny magenta dot there. A little bigger, that's okay. Little imperfections are what make things beautiful. There we go. All right, that's going to be our largest dot. And then we are going to walk these babies around. So I've got my stylus tool. I'm going to dip in. Now remember, when we walk the dots, we don't re-dip in paint. So here's my main dip right here. And then what I'm going to do is I am going to curve around. Now I'm going towards me, so I'm going to the left. So right next to this dot is going to be my starting dot, and I'm going to count out 5 more dots. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And that curves around that pink dot. And I'm going to do that with all my pink dots. So there ends up being 6 total. The dot we just created with the tiny 4mm tool, and then walking the dot. So it's 4mm, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and we end up with 6 total. So I'm going to go all the way around. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. All right, so if you were able to do that, you have mastered the hardest thing we're going to do in this class today. All right, so I'm going to put that down for just a moment. I'm going to go back to my 4mm tool, and still using my aqua, I'm going to dip in the aqua, and on the far side, on the outside of these magenta dots, I am going to create one more dot here. And I'm going to do that all the way around. And then I'm going back to my dot stylus, my teeny tiny. And we're going to walk these dots where I walk these around the left side. We're going to walk these around the right side of the magenta dots, okay? So exact same process, using that teal, using that aqua. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. All right. We are getting close to being finished. Now I have to make a minor adjustment to my design. So, and I'm going to show you where I need to make my adjustment. And this is just from recreating the same design a second time. Sometimes, you know, you vary your spacing a little bit out, and that's okay. So what I had done on the end here So you see I've got my large pink, my large magenta, and I've walked those dots around. On the end, I've got a little crown here. I didn't leave room for that here. So I can't put anything on the edges. So this next step, if you have room, you can put on these edges. I call them my snowflake points. I don't have room for that, so I'm going to modify it just a little bit, and I'm going to do it on the end of these because I've got room here. But it's totally up to your design and how you've been working. But this is where we're going to make our triangles. So I'm using light pink. So I'm going to find my little white dot, and I'm going to leave room. So I'm going to do one dot. And remember, each time you go back and get more paint for this. The only time you don't reload is when you're walking the dots. So I'm going to put my little 3 dots here. And so this slightly changes the design, but I'm here for it. I don't mind these little changes at all. Honestly, every time I paint, every time I remake a lesson, regardless of what tools I'm working with, whether it's dotting, whether it's acrylic paints, it's always just a little different because we're people. We're not machines. If we wanted to recreate something, we would scan it. We would use computer technology. That's not what handmade art is all about. All right, so what I'm doing is adding these little triangles at the ends here. And those are kind of fun. And if I can be honest, I think I like that better. All right, this is the meat of our design. This is almost complete. And what we need to do now is something called top dots. And so we have our main dots on here. And now we can embellish these dots by making another dot, another smaller dot on top. All right, so I'm going to get my tiny stylus, or I guess this is my small. My small is my 4mm. And at this point in the game, feel free, excuse me, feel free to change the colors of the top dots if you want. You don't have to do exactly as I do. So I've got my small, I'm dipping in a light pink, and I'm going to add a light pink dot right on the top of my very center dot, right on top of that aqua. And I'm just going to center it and make a little dot there. And that's called top dots. So I add one right there on my center. Now the next thing I'm going to do, like I did on my sample, I'm not going to touch these magenta and pink, but around, think in terms of circles. So I've got my main dot here, my center dot. I've got my pinks here. And then I've got a row of circles here that alternates white, aqua, white, aqua, white, aqua, white, aqua. And it's in this circle that I'm going to add top dots. I'm using my stylus, my teeny tiny, and I'm going to alternate. So on the aqua, I'm going to add white, and on the white, I'm going to add aqua. did those aqua. Let me add these whites, and I will hold it up to the camera. I just did these aqua and white dots right here. Right, I'm going to put that down, and I'm going to go back to my 4mm. Now on these two larger pink and magentas, I'm going to alternate those as well. So on this circle of pink, my large pink circles here, I'm going to do a top dot of magenta. And on the large magentas, I'm going to do a top dot of light pink. And then I have one more dot to make, and I'm going to use my stylus tip. I'm going to dip in magenta, and I'm going to do a third dot right here in the center. And that is it. That is our Springtime Burst acrylic dot painting. So it's very slightly from the sample just because I did not give myself enough room, but that happens. I would love to see your version. I really like both. They're both different, just a tiny adjustment. And you can see just by moving where I put these embellishments, I moved these to right here. It looks just a little different, and I like it. I like it a lot. So definitely let me see what version you made. I would love it if you would tag me on socials. You can do that at Paint, Rinse, Repeat. Or if you want to, you can do that in our group, which is at facebook.com/groups/paint, rinse, repeat. And you can share everything that you create with me or things that you create on your own in there. We would love to see it, so make sure you share your design in there. And I'd like to give a shout out to my supporters. My supporters get everything that I plan every month included. It's only $4.99, and you can check that out if you're interested at the address below. But thank you so much for joining, everybody. Let me know if you have any questions in the comments, and I can't wait to see what you create. Have a great night.